Thanks so much for watching. I'm Courtney, owner and designer of Wreath in Hand. Today we are making a carrot pancake wreath. And if you're not sure what that is a thin wreath that can fit between a storm door. So we are going to wire our 14-inch frame, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of these crossbars on here, and you're going to be putting a chenille stem on each of the cross frames. You're going to tie it 3 times, and then you're going to go on the bottom and put one right in the middle. Tie it 3 times, and you're going to do that all the way around the wreath. Here is what the wreath frame looks like with all of them on there. Next, we are going to prep our sign. This is a wood sign, and I'm going to be using 4 chenille stems to staple onto the back. This is not a Dollar Tree sign, okay? If you're going to do staples, you need to make sure your sign is thick enough, and you need to make sure your staples are small enough. So I use a 1/4 inch staple, and make sure your sign is at least this thick. This is what it should look like when you're all done. I added glue in between the chenille stem, and then I twisted it, and then I added glue on the outside. So as you can see, it does not poke through. So we're gonna set this aside to dry. Next, we're gonna cut our mesh. The mesh I'm using today is a poly mesh, and we're going to be cutting 12 pieces at 20 inches. Now, if you're making a pancake wreath for a 10-yard roll, you're not going to use the whole thing. You're going to have some pieces left over. So make sure you leave yourself a note that you know how many inches are left, or how many, like if you do 20 inches cuts usually, make sure you write down how many more you could do for that. That way, when you pull the roll and you think you have enough for a whole wreath, you're not like, oh, well, shoot, you know, whoops. I'm going to use my self-healing cutting mat and my rotary cutter. Ooh, this mesh is thick. So once you've cut all your pieces, you should have 6 pieces left if you're wanting to save it. I'm just going to clean up the edge a little. And if you need any of this supplies, I have it linked for you. I have all my favorite products that I use all the time. It's linked down below. I'm going to go ahead and keep cutting all of this. I finished cutting my mesh, and see, all I did was I put a little note on there so I know how much is left, and I also know how much to charge for that particular wreath. Next, we are going to cut our ribbon tails. These are the 2 ribbons I'm using today. I have a 2.5 inch carrot wreath and then a 1.5 inch lace edged ribbon. I'm not sure if I have enough for 12 pieces. I think I do. If not, I have some green ribbon that I'm going to use, but I'm going to cut 12 pieces of each, and I'm going to cut them at 12 inches. Okay, so I was in the middle of cutting my ribbon tails, and this ribbon has a splice in it. So if you're not familiar what a splice is, it's where the machine glues 2 pieces together, but do not keep that, okay? It will, well, this one's actually on pretty good, but usually like they come apart. See, it's just on there with tape. So cut that off. Don't use a splice. Now that we have our ribbon tails cut, we're going to go ahead and add our mesh in. So it's important that you follow the steps. You can't do the top layer first, okay? You have to do the bottom first, and then you can move on to the top. So we're just going to do ruffles. You can fold in a tiny piece of the edge if you want, but this mesh is really nice, so I don't think you really need to, but I'm just going to. And then you're going to spread out your fingers and you're going to walk them as straight as you can down the middle. And it's okay if you go off a little bit, you can always fix it. And then the other side's going to stay folded in a little bit. And then that's what it should look like. Excuse me. You're going to start on the bottom and do not untwist it from the frame. You're going to place the mesh right on top. And then you're going to give it about 2 twists. We are going to be adding the ribbon on top of it, so you know, it doesn't have to be fully flattened down. And then you're just going to take one side and put it on top of the other. It doesn't matter which is which, but it's going to create kind of this flower like. So it should look like that, and we're going to go ahead and add them to the rest of the wreath. I finished adding the mesh to just the bottom layer, so next we're going to go back in and add our ribbon tails. So I'm just going to layer them on top, and I'm going to fold it over. I'm going to pinch it in the center, and then I like to untwist it, but you can just pile it on top. I just prefer it all on one level. And I'm done with the ties, so I'm going to give it a good squeeze, and I'm going to twist it 5 times. And then I'm going to cut off the chenille stem, the remaining part, and then I'm just going to tuck that in to the back. You could leave this layered, it looks cute like that, but I think I'm going to spread them out. That's what it should look like. I'm going to go ahead and add it to the bottom layer, and then we'll do the same thing we did on the bottom onto the top. This is what the bottom looks like so far. Next, we're going to add it into the top. So again, we're just going to make a ruffle. Y'all, it is so hot here in Southern California. It is the end of February, and I'm not kidding. Yesterday, it was 84 degrees. 84 degrees. It was so hot. And in the morning, it was like 43 degrees. Like, I don't know. Is this meaning we're going to have a really hot summer? A really early summer? I don't know, but anyways, what's the weather like where you guys are at? I see a lot of people still have snow. Okay, so I'm just going to add it on there, and you might need to fix the bottom a little bit. Okay, so my mesh was kind of bunching under here, so I just took the top part on the bottom and I kind of turned it sideways so that this part could lay on top, and then you can just refix your ribbon. But I'm going to go ahead and add the rest into the top. Now that we have the top and the bottom layer finished, we're going to add our sign. For the top layer, I did decide to layer the top, the smaller ribbon on top of the other one, just because I kind of liked how it was a little different. So for my sign, I went around the wreath and turned it a few times before so I could figure out the best position for the sign. I like a very symmetrical wreath, so I have one up here, and then I have the 2 on the side. There's 2 here, and I think for next time, I probably should have just cut 11 because unfortunately this ribbon tie is going to be covered because we're going to add a bow. So, you know, lesson learned, but I'm going to go ahead and add my sign. Here it is with the sign on, nice and symmetrical. You can't see the ribbon ties. Next, we're going to make our bow, and hopefully I have enough of this. This is going to be a smaller bow because again, it's intended for a storm door. So you want to make sure that the bow is not too big. So I'm just going to see how long I want my tail. So it's about 8-ish. I'm going to make an 8-inch tail. And I'm going to make a 5.5-inch a 5.5-inch loop on each side. And then I'm going to make a 8-inch tail. If you need help making bows, if you're new to making bows or they're just hard for you, I recommend using what I'm using, the Easy Bow Maker. When I first started, I could not make a bow by hand. It hurt my hands and I just couldn't hold on to all the ribbon. I mean, if you're just doing one ribbon, then yeah, you know, you'll probably be okay. But if you're trying to do multiple ribbons, I definitely recommend getting this, especially if you have pain in your hand. Your bows will look so much better. And if you there are a couple other options out there, but this is the one I use and I have it linked in my comments for you. The next ribbon is this 1.5. Hopefully there's enough of this. It looks like it. So instead of dovetailing this, I'm just going to angle it. And I'm going to make the tail the same size, an 8-inch tail. And then I'm going to make the next loop. This is what the bow's looking like. I ended up doing 2 loops on each side. So the next one I'm adding is this one. It is what size is this? It's a 1-inch. So I'm going to do 1 loop on each side, and then it's just going to be a little bit smaller loop than this one, and I'll do an 8-inch tail. So instead of completely hiding that ribbon tail, I actually, from the bow, the ribbon tail that was on the bow, I actually moved it up here. I had to trim it a little bit, but since I moved the 2 tails from the bow to the sides, now you can see that ribbon tail, and I feel like it didn't get wasted. So that's what it looks like so far. We're gonna add an embellishment. I'm gonna add these cute little carrots. I think I got these at Hobby Lobby during like their 90% off, so I got a ton of them. So we're gonna add some embellishment. I'm gonna be gluing the carrots in, so I'm not gonna wire them. They're really light, so I'm just gonna put a ton of glue on the back, and you're gonna stick it in. And this will help cover up the chenille stem as well. We're going to go ahead and glue down all of them. I went ahead and glued down the one in the middle on the bow, and I held that one because you want to make sure that one's really like dry before you, like, you want to let the glue set a little bit before you let go, because the bow is probably going to be touched some, so you want to make sure that one's extra adhered.